welcome to Expert Advice. Today, we are in conversation with Professor Sundar Ram Kurivi, who is currently the Dean and Chair Professor at the National Institute of Securities Market. He's MA, PhD and a Chartered Accountant as well. Let's speak with him. Hello and welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Sir, first of all, could you tell us conceptually what are the key definitions in the real estate sector?
Yes, the real estate sector has to a large extent been unorganized, and some definitions have got clarified and formalized in terms of what is real estate, what is real estate property, and certain entities like a real estate investment trust. Also certain terminologies which were used frequently in the industry, for example, floor area ratio, FSI, TDR, etc. These have come in the formal domain of the industry. And the foreign direct investment guidelines which have come have also recognized this as an industry. So for the last 30 years this field has been unorganized, but gradually over the last 10 years this field has got organized. So these are the key definitions: real estate investment trust, and who's a developer, and various terms such as FDI, TDR, etc. These have now become assets. These have now become instruments that could be traded.
So these were the definitions. Now could you tell me how is the Indian real estate sector organized?
Yes, the Indian real estate organization can be seen in several different ways. There are a large number of small players. That's how it has been for the last 30 years. But over the last 5-10 years, we are also seeing a small number of large players. There are certain national players, for example, Godrej, DLF, Lodha, etc. And there are and will always be certain local niche players. And therefore each different market is unique. For example, in Pune it's a local competition. In Mumbai it's a local competition. In Gurgaon it could be a local competition. So there is a mix of national and local players in every markets, and therefore we call these as micro markets. Also, real estate property cannot be fully commoditized, because every single property or piece of real estate is single and unique. So that's how it has been organized. And of late, we are seeing more companies and institutions interacting in the markets as compared to individuals, as it has been the case for so many years.
Sir, since you spoke about the players, could you just elaborate about the players in the market?
Yes, some of the large players would be companies like Godrej Properties and DLF, Lodha, etc. And in the commercial real estate, we have the Piramals, who are very big players, and there are composite players like Indiabulls, etc. And there will always be local smaller players who are also growing, for example, DS Kulkarni. There are regional players like Sobha Developers, etc., Brigade Enterprises, Prestige, etc., which are south-based entities, and the market is growing. Somebody who's a small player today can become a medium-sized player later on, and somebody who's large can grow larger. So that's how the real estate sector is getting organized.
So since you spoke about the current scenario, we would like to know how was the business model previously?
Yes, previously the business model was one of shortages. A property seller would try to minimize the quantity, choke up the quantity and maximize the price. Projects on hand were small and the stock of land was limited. So a real estate supplier would try to minimize the quantity and maximize the price. That's how the model has been. But today, with land opening up and tier 2 towns opening up, tier 3 towns opening up, more smart cities coming up along the highways and the railways, and therefore the supply of land has grown. The market has also diversified. It has moved away from concentrated cities, and therefore with more land available and more competition, a supplier would reduce the price and go for volume. So it has become a volume game now rather than a profit margin game, and therefore it has been ready to assume the shape of an industry.
So you spoke about the business models, and with that market also changes. So could you please tell us how market changes are envisaged?
Yes, in fact that fear of undersupply of land, that has gone. Primarily because of several reasons. One, as I said, because of opening up of tier 3 towns and new smart cities. That would create a lot of demand. And you need large capital and larger number of players. So larger number of players are coming in. Secondly, there are organizations like public sector units. Prime examples being companies like Air India and Bank of India, which have got large amount of land parcels, and that is coming into the market. Plus, there is a shortage of capital in this country, and then institutions have come in to finance it. So earlier there was only bank financing available and private loan financing, but today share capital has become a real alternative, and therefore you have companies like private equity and real estate investment trusts which are participating in this market. And therefore in the emerging scenario, we may see that after 1-2 years, when some clarity emerges in the land title matters and also stamp duty and taxation, we'll have a greater and greater flexibility and more potential growth in this sector.
So talking about the legal aspect, could you tell us what are the legal forms of various firms?
Yes, this has evolved over a period of 30-40 years. Initially, we had mostly individuals buying and individuals selling. And those individuals then grew to Hindu undivided families. And then you had partnership firms and to some extent private limited companies. So all these organizations spawned a large number of projects. For example, a single project could be a single different entity. As a result, the same entity is having various affiliates, a partnership, a proprietorship, an HUF, a private limited company, all doing one project and then disbanding. So scale and size was not a consideration. As a result of this, these real estate companies could never build a brand. The idea was to keep the business small, do not come over the radar of the income tax authorities. That was the situation. But today, the scene is to form companies. Investors organize themselves as trusts, or for example, real estate investment trust, which is like a holding company. And you have special purpose vehicles which will also hold the assets. And you have generally private equity companies and investors organizing themselves as a limited liability partnership. Each of these has its own advantage. But as we see, the business will more and more be organized as companies. These companies will be putting up the real estate projects. They will need funding. They will take funding from real estate investment trusts, which are trusts. And private equity companies are limited liability partnerships generally. So you will have an interaction between companies, which are the issuers, and the real estate investment trusts, which are trusts, and you will have private equity firms, which are limited liability partnerships. On the investor side, you will have several entities like public sector institutions. For example, an LIC of India could be an investor, or a high net worth individual, which could be an individual or a Hindu undivided family or a family office, which will invest in the real estate investment trust. So in this way, you have an interaction of various different forms of organization having a play in the market. You will have less and less of individuals in the market and partnership firms in the traditional mold, and you will have both on the developers side, on the investors side, the retail investor side, as well as on the buyers side. Another stakeholder is the people who take property on rent. So you have commercial property, you have residential property. So and this is the way in which various forms of organization are involved.
Time for a short break. You don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Sir, since we are discussing about the organization of the Indian real estate sector, why do you suggest it is best to organize as a company?
That's a good question. As you said, it is necessary to organize as a company, because if you look at the alternatives, historically they have been proprietary concerns, partnership concerns, Hindu undivided family, and in some cases, private limited companies.
Welcome back. We were speaking with Professor Sundar Kurivi. Let's continue our conversation with him. Sir, since we are discussing about the organization of the Indian real estate sector, why do you suggest it is best to organize as a company?
That's a good question. As you said, it is necessary to organize as a company, because if you look at the alternatives, historically they have been proprietary concerns, partnership concerns, Hindu undivided family, and in some cases, private limited companies. It is possible to do only small projects. If you do small projects, then up to a point you can utilize your own funds. Then you have to go for a bank loan. But once your bank loan exceeds a particular threshold level, then banks expect you to put in more capital. Okay. Now, if you're a private limited company, you can have 50 shareholders or more. Then at some point in time, you have to become a public company. because unless you become a public company, you cannot do large projects. You may lose business opportunities. For example, manufacturing is moving outside the city centers and manufacturing is moving towards the semi-urban areas, and therefore large parcels of land become vacant in the city center. For example, Mumbai Port Trust. Now if you imagine yourself to be a proprietary or a partnership concern, how can you bid for a large parcel of land, let's say Mumbai Port Trust?
Exactly.
So therefore it is necessary to organize oneself as a company, because net worth requirements become very important, and if you want to raise your net worth, equity is the only way to go. And if you miss the opportunity, then you will be missing for tapping funding opportunities from private equity firms, foreign direct investment, and also your credibility and brand value is lost. If you do 10 projects under 10 different proprietary concerns, your opportunity to consolidate as a brand is severely impacted. And therefore, I would say it is there's no choice really. One has got to organize as a company if one has to grow. And growth is also important, because if you grow in the boom cycle, you'll develop capital, you'll develop some internal resources to also take you through a lean period. That's why net worth and capital is important, and therefore it is necessary to become a company.
So since you enlisted the importance of being a public limited company, now starting from a proprietary company, now then heading to a public limited company, what are the procedures, what one has to go through to achieve that position?
Yes, initially one can start as a small company. If you are a private limited company, then it becomes necessary to eliminate certain restrictive clauses in your memorandum and articles of association. So from a private limited company, you become a public company, which means you are able to invite shareholding and debenture investment from outsiders. Once you do that, when you access private equity companies, the advantage of that is you don't have to go public immediately. There's an agreement with the private equity firm, that is between the private equity firm and the real estate company. They are ready to go public within the next 3 to 5 years. Now the private equity company will give you all the money, will give the developer company all the money to build a project and start making profit out of it. So in consideration for the cash which is received by the real estate company from the private equity company, the private equity company gets shares. Okay. Later on, after 3 to 5 years, the private equity company can make an offer for sale to the public and apply for listing on the SME exchange, on the SME platform of an exchange. And later on, you can go to the main board, and later on you can raise money through institutional placement program, or do a rights issue, or a follow-on public offer. So that's the path over which your company evolves.
So talking about real estate companies, when we talk about real estate companies, it's not only builders and developer community. Now becoming a private limited company, from a private limited company to a public limited company, that is important for everyone who's relied on the real estate industry. So do you suggest every other company that is related to the industry should be a public limited company?
See, it is necessary to be a public limited company when you are actually engaged in real estate, that is adding value to a piece of land. It may be possible for certain construction companies or certain companies which are providing allied services to still remain in the private space. But where land is involved and scale and townships are involved, then naturally, not out of law, but out of the need for business funds, a company may choose to go public. As far as the regulatory setup is concerned, for the information of the viewers, is that real estate companies are defined differently and infrastructure companies are defined differently. Because sometimes in an infrastructure company, the key difference is that the assets may not be owned. The government continues to own the land and the project's assets are under construction. You collect a toll and then the property passes back to the government. So therefore, to isolate this, real estate companies are separate and infrastructure companies are treated as separate. But coming back to your question, it is important where large amounts of funds are required to go public, and for certain feeder services or service providers. For example, a portal related to real estate need not go public in the start. That's my response.
Okay, so you mentioned a point about regulation. For our viewers, I need to say that there is a new act in Maharashtra which enables regulation of the real estate sector. Let's know about it more from our expert.
Yes, that's an important development that has taken place. For several years now, we've been talking about an industry status for the real estate sector, which is now slowly coming into shape. And there are 2-3 directions. One is that the foreign direct investment treats real estate as an industry. This has been cleared formally by the Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion. And secondly, the Real Estate Regulatory Authority is primarily designed for consumer protection. When the consumer has certain problems or grievances, his ability to get a grievance from a consumer court for such a technical matter is limited. And therefore, to regulate the construction sector or the real estate sector, you have a Real Estate Regulatory Authority where certain structures will come into place and the method of grievances to be dealt with will be more formalized. So whereas the Ministry of Urban Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Mr. Venkaiah Naidu is the minister for that, is going to reintroduce the bill into the Lok Sabha, into the parliament. Maharashtra has already in 2012 introduced a regulation for the real estate sector. So in Maharashtra it's called the Maharashtra Real Estate Regulation Act, and in the national scene it is called the Real Estate Regulatory Authority. So this is the shape as it is to come.
Okay, time for a short break. We will continue our conversation on the real estate regulation after this very short break. You don't go anywhere, we'll be right back. So regulation is something which someone doesn't like, especially builders and the developer community. So when a bill like the real estate regulation bill is passed in a state like Maharashtra, and it's suggested that it will be soon a reality even in the country. So how do you feel, how will the builder and the developer community will accept it or reject it? Welcome back. Before heading for the break, we were talking about real estate regulation. Let's take this conversation further with our expert. So, regulation is something which someone doesn't like, especially builders and the developer community. So, when a bill like the real estate regulation bill is passed in a state like Maharashtra, and it's suggested that it will be soon a reality even in the country. So how do you feel, how will the builder and the developer community will accept it or reject it?
That's a valid question. Whenever there's new regulation of any sector, it's natural that the producers will rebel against it or revolt against it. So that kind of reaction has come. But it has been seen very positively by A, the consumers, and B, by the large organized real estate players. Because it is common knowledge that every industry has its black sheep. It happens in medicine, it happens in every sector, and real estate is no exception. So the real estate community as a whole has given mixed reactions. Every project now has to be registered with the registered authority. Okay. Delivery schedules are to be given.
Okay.
Possession handing over to the customer is time bound, and there will be very severe penalties and fines on the builder. So obviously the building community has been getting away with these, so naturally there has been an objection from them. But from the consumers there's a lot of positivity, because as an experience of an individual consumer is concerned, you will find that telecom has a regulator, okay, and there are several others. Electricity has a regulator, so why not housing have a regulator? So that has been the reaction.
In all, I feel it will be really great for consumers if something like this is passed. So our consumers, if you are worried about buying a property, no worries anymore, because our government is planning a bill which will be in your favor. Now let's take this conversation further. when talking about regulation in real estate, you mentioned about FDI. So what is the whole idea behind FDI in real estate?
It's a very important concept because let us say the government of India has said housing for all by 2022. Whether or not that objective is achieved, it's a very noble target. So even if we achieve some percentage of that, we are moving forward. But if you do a simple calculation for a population of, let's say, 1.25 billion, if you got to provide accommodation for everybody, then where is the money? Our real estate sector is mostly organized as individuals and partnerships, as I've been mentioning. They are getting into the company form of organization only now. So if a company has to raise money, how do they raise money? Firstly, they raise money through bank loans. Secondly, they have to raise money through equity issue to the domestic investors. After that is exhausted, where is the money? The money is not there in India, and there is plenty of money outside India. There's money in Europe, there's money in United States, there's money in Japan. All of these economies are having interest rates at close to 0 to 1%. So there's a huge opportunity for foreign direct investment to pick up the money from there, pick up the funds from there. There are no investment projects there at the pace at which India can expand. In fact, the industry has said that the commercial real estate in the whole of India in value will still be hardly equal to the commercial real estate in Manhattan, which is just one part of Europe. So because of a paucity of capital, that is one reason. And second is, you cannot go for more bank funding for the real estate sector because that sector has been saturated. The Reserve Bank of India is not very comfortable with banks giving loans to the construction sector. So you open up that FDI. And therefore, there's a balancing in the real estate sector. You have injections of loans from the banking system and sandwiched with injections from FDI. That's the FDI policy.
Let's hope FDI becomes a reality in the real estate sector soon. So there is one more aspect about real estate sector. SEBI, Security and Exchange Board of India, has a pivotal role to play in real estate sector. Could you expand on that?
Yes, just to connect it to the previous answer, we have understood that the banks are heavily burdened when they give loans to the real estate sector because banks will finance the construction companies, banks will finance the real estate companies to buy land, and banks will give loans to individuals to buy property. So at several stages, if you combine these three, then the bank lending to the real estate sector is very high. And remember, these are all long-term loans. Project loans are long-term loans, housing mortgage loans are long-term loans. And banks are better equipped to primarily provide working capital and liquidity to the system. So banks are better suited for retail loans of a small ticket size, smaller duration, and therefore the capital markets should provide a solution. So if we stop the banks from giving too much of long-term funding, and therefore the idea is to bring to the capital markets the projects that would otherwise go for bank funding. And therefore in this direction, SEBI has done three things. One is private equity, and one is real estate, and the other is the securitization guidelines. These three guidelines address the real estate sector, and when the real estate investment trusts and private equity companies invest in the real estate sector, it has got the shape of some regulation.
So talking about the regulation part, what are the key regulations for the issuers?
The key regulations for the issuers are known as ICDR, Issuers Compliance and Disclosure Regulations.
Okay.
That is streamlined along with the Companies Act. It points out the various ways in which companies can raise capital. It defines what is a prospectus, because everything revolves around the prospectus. What is the manner in which the prospectus is registered with SEBI, and how the listing of the securities with the stock exchanges takes place, and the manner in which money can be raised, for example, a private placement or an institutional placement or a fast track issue, or even issues for listing to the SME exchange. So this is the regulation for issuers.
So now we spoke a lot about regulation. Now let us talk about the avenues for troubled companies. Do you enlist some?
Yes, troubled companies will always be there. And over the last several years, what has happened is the real estate companies have been buying land and more land rather than completing and delivering the project on time. As a result of which their loans have gone up from the banking system. They have taken private loans also, and they have got some land in their name but these are incomplete projects. As you know, an incomplete project cannot be sold even if it is 99% complete.
Okay.
And therefore the customers will not come. Customers are waiting for the prices to fall and producers are waiting for the prices to rise. So it's a deadlock. So such companies get troubled because they don't have the cash flows in order to repay their bank loans. As a result of which, there are two things. A company with good projects can offer itself for a takeover to another company in the same industry. Just as an example, Godrej Properties will be in a position to buy good distressed companies. Okay. Because it's a strong company taking over a weaker company. There is a complementarity. Here is a project and here is a strong promoter with the funds. Another way is these asset reconstruction companies. Asset reconstruction companies essentially are companies with deep net worth. They buy troubled assets from banks so that the banks will clean up their non-performing assets. So what these asset reconstruction companies do is they buy the troubled loans and projects from a company, from a bank at a deeply discounted rate. So the bank gets some cash, and later on when the asset reconstruction company finds a proper buyer, they will sell it at a good price and some of the profit is shared back with the banks. So this is the way in which the troubled companies and troubled projects which are otherwise illiquid get some liquidity. So there is scope for mergers and acquisitions and there is scope for an asset reconstruction company.
That was such a good piece of information for all the troubled companies out there. Thank you so much for coming on our show, sir.
Thank you. Thanks to your viewers.
I hope the viewers like this program and they even got a lot of information about the real estate sector. We'll be back with another episode of Expert Advice. Till then, you keep watching Spin TV. Goodbye. Take care.